Star Trek, the 2009 reboot, sort of. My brother and I discussed it after seeing it when it was new. Chuck, aka SF Debris, and I talked about it just for laughs, but now it's time to really sit down and review this. Before we start, I want to give you a little background on the cycles that my Star Trek fandom has taken over the years, and how it all led to my attitude going into this film. Obviously, I grew up with the original films, and it was obvious from the beginning that when they were bad, but when they were good, they were a masterpiece. I was blown away by the good ones. I still am. The first Star Trek film I had ever seen was Star Trek II, and the first Star Trek series I had ever seen was Star Trek The Next Generation. And when I watched this series, I thought it was amazing. The stories were so consistently good, and the characters so consistently average to good, I was hooked from the start. I basically thought it was an outstanding show, and nothing could ever compare to it. I didn't even watch Deep Space Nine until around its 4th season because it looked like a throwaway show to me, made simply to extend the franchise. How exciting could a bunch of people hanging out on a space station really be? They can't even go anywhere. But when I did finally watch the show, I was amazed. The fully realized universe they created and an amazing story arc involving the Federation and the Dominion was just so well done. I was hooked again, and then I was like, okay, never mind about The Next Generation. It was okay, but this is the real Star Trek show. It's got better characters, it's got a great story arc, this is the one to watch. Now, by the time I started doing Confused Matthew, it was right around the time I started watching the original series for the first time. Needless to say, I was amazed. They had a lot of bad episodes in that series, but when the episodes were good, they weren't just good. They were brilliant masterpieces unto themselves. I had never seen any of the other Trek shows do episodes as good as that show did on its best days. So now I'm like, okay, never mind. Next Generation sucks. Deep Space Nine sucks. This is the real Star Trek. All the other shows are just pretenders to the throne. So as you can see, I have covered just about every kind of Star Trek fan you can possibly be in my lifetime. But since that time, I've kind of grown up a little more and realized that there is room in the world for more than one good Star Trek show. I'm looking back now fondly on all 3 of these shows and accepting them on their own terms. Each one had their own strengths and weaknesses, but Star Trek The Next Generation, and Star Trek Deep Space Nine were all really good. The only show I have remained consistent on through my whole Trek experience was Star Trek Voyager. Voyager was bad then, and it's still bad now. It had some good episodes, but very, very few. Overall, yeah, it was bad. Then there was that thing they did after Voyager, but that is just something completely different altogether. For as bad as Voyager was, I can sit through a Voyager episode. That thing they did after Voyager wasn't just bad. It was an unwatchable insult, and to this day, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to give it the oxygen of consideration. It's not a real show. God, moving on. So by the time I had finally settled all of my Star Trek bipolar disorder into an objective view of all of the shows, the reboot comes out, and now I have to readjust all over again. Keep in mind that for years, I had watched and loved the best of the original films, so when I heard that they were doing a film using the original characters again, I thought, okay, what are you planning to do? Are you planning to make quality films the way that they did, or are you just using something that was once real art to make cheap entertainment? And once I started to see the trailers and a few of the sneak previewed scenes, I actually started to get a little pissed off. It really looked like they were only trying to make a flashy pile of special effects in action. But after having 3 years to think about it, I think I may have been wrong about that, at least to a point. And just as with Back to the Future Part 2, my opinion on this film hasn't really changed much, but my attitude towards it definitely has. No, I don't think it was very good. Yes, I think it was better than I gave it credit for originally, but you have to give me some time with something like this. I'm old and set in my ways. My biggest criticism of the film the first time around is that it wasn't very ambitious. Basically, a mad space villain is trying to destroy the universe, and the crew of the Enterprise has to stop him. It isn't about much more or less than just that. Honestly, I was really disappointed by that. This is the first time we've seen the original characters do anything new in almost 2 decades, and it's like they didn't think they needed to make them do anything special. They just have them doing something routine and dull the whole time. But over the years, I've thought about the position they were in when trying to get this movie off the ground. Star Trek as a franchise died out with their last movie being a flop and their last quote-unquote television series being cancelled. It failed big, and Paramount was aware of this. They did not forget. So the name Star Trek was plague when it came to the studio for a good many years. They didn't really want to touch it. So not only are the filmmakers asking the studio to take a chance on something that bit them in the ass twice, but they're also asking them to take a chance on an audience accepting Star Trek without William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. And if the studio gives you a green light on that big a gamble, they're going to want to see results. So the people behind this film were in a really tight spot when it came to the studio and audience expectations. They had to please everyone enough to get this franchise off the ground again. After seeing this for the first time, I criticized it heavily for not being ambitious enough, but I've now come to accept the fact that this is not the film you get to be ambitious with. This is the film you prove can swim and will not sink. And once you do that, then you can start making good movies out of this thing you've built. Star Trek 2009 is the foundation that will hopefully be used to build something great on. And so while I still don't think what they did was very good, I can't really fault them for this anymore. I understand why they did it this way now. Other than that, I don't have much more to say about it than I did before. It's an entertaining enough film to watch, and if you're only judging it on how efficiently it restarts the series, then it does that job very well. Let me just say first, I love the opening scene. The scene where Kirk's parents are talking to each other over the intercom and they're deciding what to name the baby and telling each other how much they love each other. This was very heartfelt and very good. The rest of the film could have used a little bit of this heart, but after this moment, it really just becomes an action film. The characters are a mixed bag. I can see Chris Pine playing a good Kirk eventually, but I really don't like him in this one. He's a little too frat. I mean, Kirk is a cut-loose, put-your-feet-up-on-the-desk kind of character and all, but this guy is just kind of a doof. I didn't really like Scotty either. I thought he was way too over-the-top comical. I liked Chekhov a lot. I thought he was endearing. Sulu was generic as fuck. Uhura was generic as fuck. But Karl Urban did a very good job of playing a younger Bones. The only standout character here was Zachary Quinto as Spock, who seemed to pull off the impossible. He remains true to the roots and nerve center of what that character was without just repeating Leonard's performance or just completely reinventing the character from scratch. He strides that perfect middle ground between staying true to what Spock is all about. Look at his performance compared to Tim Russ's Tuvok, who basically just did the best Leonard Nimoy impression that he could. It wasn't bad by any means, but it did feel like an impersonation of Spock, just slapped with a different name. Quinto remains true to the original character while adding his own unique touch to Spock, and even when my opinion of this film was at its all-time low, I was very impressed with him, and I still am. The one thing that hasn't changed for me over the years, which is why I still don't think this movie was very good, is that I just wish the story had been better. Like I said, it's really just a bunch of characters scrambling around trying to stop a villain from destroying the universe. And it's not helped by the fact that the villain is piss poor awful fuck garbage. If we're just going by motivations, then I think he might be the worst Star Trek villain of any of the films, and that includes Sauron, Ruafo, and the Borg sex dominatrix. At least what these people wanted made sense. Basically, Nero is destroying planets because Romulus was blown up and he got sent back in time. So now he's pissed off because Romulus was blown up, and he wants revenge against Spock because Spock tried to help him but was a little late. Yeah, that's a great motivation. Makes all the sense in the world. Dude, you traveled back in time! Imagine this for a second. Marty McFly sees Doc Brown get shot to death. Then he hops in the DeLorean and travels back to 1955. So now he says, holy crap, I'm in 1955. Doc's still alive somewhere and I have 30 years before he gets shot. Well, there's only one logical thing to do. I have to kill all the Libyans. Kill all the Libyans for what they did to my Doc. No, bullshit. You're in the past. Doc is alive. Don't be retarded. Just tell him what's gonna happen, send it off in a letter to yourself, and save him. Romulus is not destroyed in this time. Just warn them. You fucking retard. Ultimately, Star Trek the 2009 reboot is nothing special, but it could be used as a launching pad to make something outstanding. As of this recording, the new Star Trek sequel is still being made, but we're hearing a lot of encouraging things from the filmmakers. They haven't committed to a set release date because they don't want to release this until it's the best film they can make it. They're looking to inspirations like The Dark Knight on how to elevate the film into something great. I like what I'm hearing, and I think now that this film has been a success and they have more freedom, they can make a good film. No, I think they can make a great film, and I sincerely hope they do. But as for this one, it still wasn't very good, but it did successfully reboot the franchise. Where they boldly go from there, however, we'll just have to wait and see.